There you go.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Bart Reed, the Executive Director of the Transit Coalition. We're a Southern California-based nonprofit that deals with transportation advocacy, land use planning, educational programs, and goods movement. Tonight is one of our educational programs, which is the high-speed rail project. And we have the Southern California Project Director for high-speed rail, which is Michelle. And rather than, Michelle will tell you a little about her biography. But I do want to mention, before I forget, somebody left a cup. Anybody recognizes this? It belongs to somebody. We have meetings every month, and this coming meeting 3 weeks from now, on the 21st of March, we have Vincent, how do you say your last name?
Chio.
Vincent Chio, who's right here, and he's going to teach his daughter. She might be doing the presentation because their family is, believes in education and has the kids advance. That's STEM program. But Vincent is here, and he's going to talk about the Link Union Station, which is a project we've covered over the years, but now it's moving into past planning. So Vincent's I believe you're the assistant project manager?
Correct.
And he's also a civil engineer. And so he'll be coming in a month. The invitations went out today, so if you want to sign up or sponsor the meeting, I would encourage you to do so. Also coming up on April 11th is a guy by the name of Phil Washington. Phil happens to be the CEO of Metro, so he'll be speaking. That will probably sell out, so if you want to buy tickets, I suggest you look at the link on the invitation and buy tickets now. Between February and March 21st, we also have a meeting scheduled, and I don't have my notes here who it is, but we do have a speaker coming for that date. Also in July, we have Richard Clark, who's the Director of Metro Construction, and then later this year we have an update on the Van Nuys Boulevard Light Rail Project. We have an update coming on the East Los Angeles Gold Line extension. We have theoretically the Foothill Gold Line extension coming up in a meeting. And we also have the Valley to West Side rail project. So we've got a lot of different projects coming. When the new person comes in, he's going to be the Director of Planning for Metro. We'll get that person. So we've got a lot of interesting meetings. And so I welcome you to this meeting here. We're going to take a second and everybody will introduce themselves. So Michelle, Paul Dyson, could you come up here for a minute? Paul Dyson has long been, his organization, Rail Passengers Association of California, has long been a sponsor of Transit Coalition, and we sometimes work to conspire to get things that we think should be done properly for passengers and for rail, and just getting things done the right way. So Paul is moving on to a new position, but he wants to tell you about some things for a minute, so I'm going to turn it over to Paul.
Very briefly, thank you again for supporting this meeting. So some of you have been to these meetings before. I apologize if you've heard this commercial before, but when I first came over to this country in 1980, we had a lot of transportation clubs in Southern California, Delta Nu Alpha, LA Transportation Club, and so on. And most of them had at least some educational purpose. And these have all dwindled away over the years, and this group here tonight and what Bart's doing represents a continuation of that, which I think is very, very important. I'd like all of you to spread the word about these meetings. We need to bring more younger people into this exciting industry. There's so many projects going on in the Southern California region, and we're going to need more engineers and more managers and more people who are going to build these things. So I would encourage you to continue to support these meetings and to bring, particularly again, younger people, office juniors, apprentices, whatever, and get them involved in this industry. Secondly, RailPac we've been around for 40 years. We're a non-profit. I shall continue to be a member. I've just decided to turn myself out as president. But we've been around for over 40 years as a non-profit educational and advocacy group, and we will continue to sponsor these meetings, and we will invite you to join us. Our magazine, Steel Wheels, is there on the counter there. The latest edition has just come out, and feel free to contact us with any questions, and feel free to clip out that coupon and become a member. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul. Okay, well, I want to welcome everybody to our meeting tonight. Michelle is going to give a presentation. She'll tell you a little about herself. But Michelle has got incredible armor, considering the project. I mean, when we started marketing the project, this particular meeting 3 weeks ago, we had the governor announce that the governor didn't quite understand what he was saying to the public, because you can tell somebody you're going to finish part of the project, and all of a sudden the news stories come out, the project's being dismissed. Then it doesn't matter, you listen on the radio, people don't understand. It's really simple. They're going to focus on a little bit more, extend some parts of the project. Michelle will understand or explain to you. But it became really difficult because generally we get a much larger crowd, but all of a sudden this toxicity towards high-speed rail has really been unkind. We do have great information. The project is well and alive. Michelle will explain to you. But, I mean, there's no secret. I mean, it was amazing the day that I put the notice out. The governor did his notice. If he had just left it alone for a while, we'd have had 40 or 50, 60 more people there. But it's interesting how it got interpreted and where it's at. So anyways, without further ado, Michelle, come on up, and it's all yours.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate everybody
You
who
don't have
is...
to have your armor tonight. You have nice people.
I appreciate everybody who is willing to spend Thursday night with us. I like to say, can you put the camera down for a second? I'll talk to you a little bit about that, but it's not different. The other thing that I like to tell people is, every time there's, there's a conversation in the public realm about high-speed rail, immediately I think, oh, geez, my job just got a lot easier, right? Nothing to do. Well, it turns out, like every other time since I've been here, that's not true. And I'm doing exactly the same thing today that I was doing the Monday before the State of the State speech, which was exactly what was articulated in the 2018 business plan. We have to focus somewhere, and we've got to build somewhere. We've got construction going on now in the Central Valley. We need to turn that into something meaningful so people can see the value. At the same time, we need to make sure the rest of the Phase 1 project is shovel ready. We have to get this thing through environmental clearance so that we can start really thinking about how you would build once you get trains testing in the Central Valley. And then we have to really make it meaningful to people. We have to make it meaningful to people across the state, and the way that we do that is in 2012, the legislature appropriated dollars to go into what's called bookend projects. So we have some money to put into a really important project in Northern California. That's the Caltrain Peninsula project and the electrification up there. That agreement is set, that work is underway, and then here in Southern California, we had money, we had a list of 70 projects that the region put together as aspirational back in 2012. Well, right now that money is going to go to 2 of those projects that were on the list. It's going to go to the Rosecrans-Marquardt grade separation project, which is a little bit south here, and it's going to go to the modernization of Union Station, or the run-through track project. Those 2 projects, when combined, and there's a reason why it's those 2 projects, right? Because again, the region had 70 projects that they thought might be good candidates, and then they ranked them, and Lincus was top. But the reason those 2 projects make sense here in Southern California is by combining those 2 projects and getting them done as soon as we can. The day they're complete, Metrolink can run their service differently than they do today. They can run more trains through the heart of the urban area than they can today. Lausanne can expand its service window later or earlier and run more trains, and they're going to help us reduce the delay or improve essentially the customer service aspect of riding transit. One big issue with transit, right, certainly in Southern California, there's this historic, kind of car culture that we have, but at the end of the day, transit works if it's reliable and it's safe and it does what you need it to do. People will go ride transit if it's there on time, it gets you where you need to go on time, there are convenient schedules, and you feel safe when you're riding it. If we can't say those things, we're gonna have a hard time getting, changing the culture and really the paradigm to a transit Southern California, right, with cars for fun, right? It shouldn't be a car Southern California with transit for fun. So those are the things that we're kind of looking at, and I have, kind of some more specific slides that lay that out. But it is really difficult work because change is really, really hard. When you go down and you're walking block by block or you're talking in neighborhoods, people are afraid. They're afraid about things they don't understand. In my office, we call it the boogeyman syndrome, right? People start circulating rumors about things the project will do, and many of them are not correct. And so we have to be able to get out and we have to be able to tell people what is going to happen and what's not going to happen. We have to be transparent about it, right? This project is big and there are impacts. We need to be absolutely upfront about what those impacts are, but we've got to make sure people don't think the project's doing stuff it's not. So that's one of the things that we work hard at as well, but it's difficult. It's difficult because sometimes the boring details are not that fun. They're not that great to report. People don't talk about, kind of the ho-hum things that are going on with the project. They talk about it, when it's gonna, come, where it's gonna have a tunnel portal. They don't talk about it where it's in tunnel, for instance. And so, those are just, some kind of off-the-cuff thoughts. So we definitely appreciate all the folks like you that take the time to learn about the project. Doesn't mean you agree with everything we do, but if you've learned about the project and you can play forward what's going on and what's not going on in an authentic way, it helps us ultimately build the project. And speaking of which, what is the project? Monday, a couple weeks ago, this was the project, the 800-mile high-speed rail project. Today, a few weeks later, this is the project. An 800-mile all-electric, high-speed capable railroad. We have a phase 1 project, which goes from San Francisco down to Anaheim. That's about 510 miles or so. That's where we have active construction right up here, in the Central Valley, exactly what we're doing today. And then we have the 2 pieces of phase 2 down in Southern California going through the Inland Empire down to San Diego, and in the north going up to Sacramento. This is meant to be express rail. This is not meant to replace our commuter rail. This is not meant to replace our intercity rail. This is quite specifically meant to be an express rail service, of course all electric, all renewable energy. And what does that mean? It means we don't have tons of stations, right? We are meant to make those longer trips faster and more convenient than people can make them today. So if you take a look at this map, you might be able to see at the back, but the front row probably can see there's some white dots all over this. That represents the stations. Our statute indicates that we would have up to 24 stations. You're going to count these dots, you're probably going to get more than 24 because down here on the 2 yellow pieces, we're still kind of going through the math and discussing where those stations would be. If you take a look at these cities where we will have stations and you look at the population, we will have a station in the heart of 8 of the 10 largest cities in the state of California by population. This is absolutely an express rail service that is meant to serve the largest number of folks in the state of California that we possibly can, and create linkages we don't have today. Today, of course, you know, we can't take a train from LA Union Station to Bakersfield, for instance, which, by the way, top 10 city by population. I know that's over the Tehachapi's, and we're like, what, really? But seriously, top 10 city by population. Fresno, top 10 city by population. We've got a lot of folks living out there. You can't take a train, right, over, well, you can take a train up to Palmdale, but you can't take it up to Bakersfield, so you get on a bus here. We would then create that high-speed capable link across the Tehachapi's and underneath the San Gabriel Mountains so that you can make that trip. That is a really important connectivity for the state of California we don't have today. Why is Palmdale interesting? You know, people kind of look at this and they're like, oh, you know, what's going on here? What does this represent? And I'm gonna go over here because this is overlaid on the top, and then obviously a lot of things are straightened. This is representational. The other is, you know, kind of more authentic. But what this is here, right? What this does here is it becomes the foundation of this. It becomes the express foundation of this future vision of rail and connectivity, not only for the state of California, but for the entire Southwest region. And so when you start to think about Palmdale and you're thinking, that's interesting. Number one, you should think, hey, there's 500,000 people living in the Antelope Valley. If that was a city, not multiple cities in an unincorporated county, that would be a top 10 city by population. But someday, that is also a hub with a connection to Las Vegas. That's why that's interesting. If you want to think about why is that interesting that we're going out east through the Inland Empire, number one, we're connecting, obviously, the Inland Empire into San Diego and the urban LA area, but that's a future connection to Phoenix someday as well. So when you start to put this in context, you start to see a pattern and an opportunity in the future to connect people in a way that we don't have connections today. And so the idea here, and if you are very interested, you should go look at this. This comes from the 2018 California State Rail Plan. So if you're really interested in the bigger vision, go read about this because this is very, very interesting. The idea of all these points here, they're all entry points into this system. And you could go to any one of these points and you could get on a service and you could get then with timed connections to any of those other points. That's the idea, to put this connected overlay or web on top of the state of California. And again, it's not to replace anything we have today, it's to complement it. Now let me go back here. So essentially, you know what I said, we're doing the exact same thing. This is basically what was identified in the 2018 business plan as what we're doing. This is what we're doing today. We are going to, although we kind of focused a little bit more and said Merced to Bakersfield, make that operational as soon as possible. Get the civil works done, lay the rail, get trains running, invest in the bookends, right? The Caltrain and the Link Us and Rosecrans Marquardt, and finish the environmental review. Make sure that the entire phase one section is shovel ready. That's what we continue to work to do. And here's another way to look at the region. This is a little different, and this one then includes the freight service, right? So you've got basically the intercontinental service BNSF runs going up and east. Oh, and we threw in Express West and potential connection from Victorville into Palmdale in this map too. So we can't plan high-speed rail in a vacuum. We have to plan it as part of this whole system. You can see up here to the north of Burbank, you can see the turquoise. That's where high-speed rail is a brand new high-speed capable railroad. Once we come in here to Burbank, we're joining the existing railroad corridor from here to here, Burbank to Anaheim. That's our shared urban corridor. And so everything that we're doing in there today, everything we're clearing environmentally, is a look at a phased approach where you could go in and you could start building pieces of it. You could start building an extra track here and there. You can start building a grade separation. You could build link us. And as you start to put these puzzle pieces together, all of a sudden you've got a high capacity urban corridor there. And the last thing that you do is you go in and you lay in the electricity, and then high-speed rail can join that corridor. But in every piece that you put in that corridor, up until high-speed rail starts running, is a direct benefit to the goods movement industry and freight and our existing passenger services running in these industries. It's going to open up more capacity, like I said, for Metrolink. The Rosecrans Marquardt project on top of the third track immediately opens up 20 more slots or more for trains to run through these corridors. And so that's why those things are important. Here's another look at that urban corridor, right, zoomed in. So this is the middle of that map on the previous page. You've got Burbank up there, Los Angeles, and then you come down here to Arctic. And then you can also see now overlaid on top of it all of the other regional transit projects that are going on today in the LA County area. And then you start to see you've got this major kind of, it's not quite north-south because it kind of goes sideways and whatever, but in my mind, north-south corridor, and then you've got these east-west corridors, right? Crossing it so that you can provide a kind of opportunity for trips that we don't have access to today. We're getting there. You know, I got here today on a bus and a subway. Some of you probably got here today on something similar or some other, you know, kind of group of transit services. So we're starting to get there, but we aren't quite there yet, and there are some critical linkages still to go. When we talk about a shared urban corridor, here are a bunch of features of that. So when we're doing the environmental document for Burbank to LA and LA to Anaheim, and we are looking at this shared urban corridor, these are the things that are in this environmental document. We're taking those corridors today, mostly 100-foot wide, and we're looking at them and figuring out how do we make this a 21st century corridor. Obviously, they were all built a little bit of a few beats ago. So we want positive train control, obviously, in the corridors. That's nearly completed at this point. Southern California was one of the first locations in the entire United States to bring positive train control online. So we've got our trains operating. That's great. Now trains don't run into trains because we don't want that happening. That's no good. But you know what? Trains can still run into a lot of other things. So we want corridor protection and detection. We want consistent fencing around the corridor so that kids cannot walk in front of trains, pets cannot walk in front of trains, and cars cannot drive in front of trains, and any other of your multimodal, you know, bird scooters can't get in front of trains. Nothing's in front of trains, right? If we have better fencing, we have walls. Where we have residential areas or sensitive receptors near these corridors, we have sound walls, right? So we're a better neighbor. This corridor can run more higher capacity, more frequency, and the neighbors are still super happy. We're looking at the grade separations too, lifting every road up and over or down and under the train so that we do not have roads and train tracks at the same level. We are looking at earthquake early warning systems in all of these corridors. These are operational in Japan, and it's just a really good thing to do because you can slow those trains down and stop them at the first P wave, and people get bumps and bruises. They don't get catastrophic injuries. That's a great thing. And then we want to make sure that we're planning around the station location, station areas as well. So we're basically building all of these things into our environmental clearance so that when we are done, we've got the shared urban corridor, high-speed rails operating in it, Metrolinx operating in it, Losand's operating in it, Amtrak's operating in it, and we've got freight trains operating in it. And we're able to untangle that operation so that all of those users of the corridor do better than they do today. Here's a list, again, I talked about a number of these investments that we were making because it was important that we were able to start to show progress as soon as possible. So parts of the high-speed rail 1A bond were invested in the regional connector here, in the PTC here, in the new Tier 4 Metrolink locomotives at about $90 million from the High-Speed Rail Authority. We also did a project, helped San Diego with a project, the Blue Line modernization. And then our next tranche of projects here are really those two projects, those two pretty significant projects, Rosecrans Marquardt and Linkus. And I'm super excited. If any of you have ever come to our public meetings, we come up with all kinds of graphics that show the process to get to route selection, get to the final environmental document. This was our most recent one. And for many, many years, I went to every meeting and I could not get off the top line. And I'm super excited to say today, we're actually on the second line. So we made it around the corner, all the way back down. We have a preferred alternative now. We went to our board in October and November of last year, and we presented all the work we've done. Some people thought it was great, some people still meh. And we said, based on everything we know today, we believe XYZ alternative for Bakersfield to Palmdale, XYZ alternative for Palmdale to Burbank, for Burbank to LA, and LA to Anaheim. These are the preferred alternatives. These are the routes we want to focus on in our environmental document and release a draft environmental document identifying them as the routes that should be selected. So that is going on right now. Those environmental documents are being completed with those preferred alternatives that were identified and concurred then by our board last fall. And we will start rolling those out. We have 4 projects down here. We will start rolling those out probably about September of this year. And then they will sequence out. The most exciting project many of you probably realize that we're working on down here is Palmdale to Burbank. It's one of the most complicated projects that we're working on. It has the longest tunnels of any of the projects right now in the high-speed rail, 500-mile phase 1 system. And it really is the project that has to bridge the gap between, the less urban parts of California and the most urban parts of California. And a lot of debate about what that route should be really revolves around that. What do we do? How do we bring a modern high-speed rail system into already a highly urbanized area? For those of you who may not be familiar, I think most of you probably are, we are under construction now in the Fresno area. Many of you are probably aware that we also received a love note from the FRA in recent weeks. And what I would say about that is our grant is on our website. So if you want to take a look at the High-Speed Rail Authority's federal grant, you can find it on the High-Speed Rail Authority website. Right now, we are in compliance with the grant. I noticed today that there were some comments suggesting that we weren't in compliance with the grant. Well, here's the really interesting thing about the grant. Within the grant, because the federal government awarded these monies to help us make the whole thing shovel-ready, complete the environmental document, but then to do this construction work in the Central Valley. That's what the grant was awarded to us to do. As part of the award, the federal government wanted to ensure that what was built in the Central Valley would be used. And so we have this notion of the first construction segment or section within the grant. And that $900 million that was talked about recently, that was money awarded to California to make sure that that first construction section, which was actually only about 120 miles long, could be made to operate railroads on, that it wouldn't be left there for a long period of time without anything going on. We didn't want to leave it there. So, this is underway now. We need to put rail on this. We can run electric, high-speed rail on that. That's compliant with the grant. We could also run conventional trains on it. That's compliant with the grant. But that's the FCS, and right now, based on the governor's speech, the FCS has now been expanded a little bit, right? Essentially, the first operating segment is going to be Bakersfield all the way up to Merced. That notion is completely consistent with our grant language. So there's nothing to see here, obviously, except rough sledding, you know, between the West Coast and the East Coast. So that's that, and that's my presentation. If you have any questions, let me know.
The work package 4 goes to, I guess, 30 miles from Bakersfield. Is there going to be a work package 5 that brings it into the Bakersfield station?
Well, you know, we've been debating the numbering, what we call our packages for quite some time. The last time that I was in, you know, at the mothership, it was talked about that we would have work package 5 and work package 6. We would have a rolling stock package. That's been talked about for quite some time. And then we would also take, you know, we would have 5 and 6, and then we would have track and systems, and we would have rolling stock. So that's what we're looking at right now. That's what we have, you know, a furious part of an office building in Sacramento. You know, people are pulling out their hair, trying to figure out all of the details. The details south should be pretty clear. We just completed the EIR, the certification of the environmental document for the Bakersfield station. We had completed an EIS for Fresno to Bakersfield some time ago, and we recently completed a supplemental EIS to relocate basically the Bakersfield station in the F Street location. So that went to our board last October as well, and our board certified that. So we have a route there, we know where we're going, and now we just gotta, you know, get contracts.
So how much have you guys been working with Metrolink on electrification between, well, I guess sharing electrification infrastructure between Anaheim and Burbank, because that was also in the SCORE program, or studying electrification across the Metrolink system?
A lot, right? Because we are studying that all as shared use tracks. So we work with Metrolink all the time. Part of why I think Metrolink, you know, open the door on electrification someday is the work that we've been doing with them. If we can get a stake in the ground on electrification and get at least that first 45 miles done, then it starts to be a lot more attainable to Metrolink to, you know, extend it out to the next station, the next station, the next station. I think most of you know the challenges that our other operators have with a technology change is just how broad their service area is. So Metrolink's got 500 plus miles of service area. That is almost an insurmountable task when you just look at it at face value. How would you electrify 500 miles? What kind of money would that take, et cetera, et cetera. But if you kick it off, right? If we pick a technology, if we get it kicked off, if we start with electrifying, you know, the core of it in the middle, then it starts to become a lot easier. And so, I mean, you know, the state of California, I don't think is gonna back down on climate resiliency and you know, weaning ourselves off of fossils. Right now, for those of you who don't know, about 40% of the stuff that we don't want going into the atmosphere is going into the atmosphere via the transportation sector. It actually went up in the recent years because of the rules put on the utility sector. They actually drove their percentages down because of some of the recent rules. So the transportation sector has gone up. Now we have all kinds of things that are going to happen, and you know, we have all kinds of interesting things that happen with cars and et cetera, but the rails are always going to be an important part, I think, of that equation. So as we continue to move forward, as you can show a proof of concept, then I think it makes it easier and easier and easier to do. And you can start thinking about sharing rolling stock. You can start thinking about trains carrying multiple badges so that, you know, one train is badged as a Metrolink train and a low sand train and a high-speed rail train, right? You can start thinking about a whole lot of things if you can just get it started. And I think we got Metrolink a little bit excited.
What about, is BNSF cooperative between LA and Fullerton?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes, they are. That has been what, that's why my gray hair has started to come in. Is we've been working really, really hard here in the urban corridor with all of the users, including the freights, not as much with UP. They've been through a lot of changes lately, and it's different. They have a different ownership of the rails here. They own some of the right-of-way. They don't own all of it like BN does south of Union Station. So BN has been an absolute participant in our discussions and partners in our discussions. So basically, when this is going to happen south of Union Station, it will be as a partnership between the public agencies and BNSF. We probably will have BNSF doing some of the construction of just the track infrastructure, right? Instead of as a public agency doing it, because you know sometimes the private sector, they carry a little bit bigger stick. They get those projects done on time and on budget, right? Because they just put their mind to it. So we're going to be looking at all kinds of things to get that done. They are going to modernize Hobart. That entire yard will be modernized. Everything operating exclusively in the yard will be electric. They are not going to, now again, going back to the comment I made about the big area, right? They're running a national network, right? They can't put electricity up. Right now, that's a barrier for them as a business to put electricity up on their entire national network. And it would not be efficient for them to only have it operating in California based on the types of rolling stock and the technologies that we have today, right? In the future, if we can have trains that can switch back and forth, right? And all kinds of different things, and we can, right? That's emerging in the marketplace right now, right? Trains that carry batteries and diesel, right? All kinds of things are happening, at least I'm seeing it, in the research space. So then you can start thinking about it. But in terms of putting up a national electrical network on top of the tracks, that's probably a bridge too far.
Just a couple quick questions. Can you tell me what's the preferred alternative between Palmdale and Burbank is?
The Palmdale to Burbank preferred alternative is the refined SR14 alternative. So it's basically tunneling out of the Antelope Valley. It emerges and pops over the freeway right over close to Red Rover Mine Road. It dives back in a tunnel, pops out of a tunnel, dives in a tunnel, pops out of a tunnel, goes in the big tunnel at the old Vulcan mine site east of Santa Clarita, and then is tunneling underneath the San Gabriel Mountains, pops up in the kind of northeast San Fernando Valley over by the old DWP plant and the spreading grounds. It emerges up out of a tunnel at that location and basically comes across the spreading grounds, comes across the DWP facility, the western side of it, and then it goes through Vulcan mine property again. So the old mine property. So in your mind, if you can picture that part of the San Fernando Valley, there's that whole area that really is an older industrial area. You've got, some facilities that are devoted to the automotive industry, not surprising, because that's what we got. You've got that old gas-fired DWP plant that's slowly, kind of ramping down. You've got those big pits where, guess what? You could put tunnel spoils and fill them back up to surface and create more land, right? Woo. It's almost like it's meant to. And so we then basically join the Metrolink Railroad corridor again. So we come across, right as we get in front of the LA DWP, we're coming back into that Metrolink corridor, and we're using and hugging that Metrolink corridor until we begin to depress and leave it again to an underground station platform next to the new Hollywood Burbank Airport.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate your clarity tonight. You mentioned in your remarks the idea of getting Merced to Bakersfield as soon as possible.
Yes.
What's as soon as possible? Or what's the soonest?
Somebody,
you know what,
I'm not even gonna put a number out there. Like, it's, let's just say it's gotta happen before, we're gonna turn a decade here, right? It's gotta happen before the next one.
Got it.
Well before the next one.
Okay, and
Yeah.
the last question, setting aside this state comment, the state audit that reviewed the authority's performance, are there consequences to that audit, or outcomes, I should say, changes at the authority as a direct result of the audit?
Absolutely. We are, retraining all of our contract managers. We are expanding our contract management group. We are, kind of putting more rigorous policies in place for the paperwork that, that needs to be attached to the expenditure of taxpayer dollars. And, when Gavin said we could do better, this is really that place. We could absolutely do better. I think we're making strides to that. I think, we have a lot of information up, and transparency, I think, is part of that as well in our decision making. So we'll see. We will be issuing a response basically that summarizes all of the things and all of the changes that have happened based on that audit. And then we will also be issuing a letter response to the FRA point by point, where they have identified that they feel like we're not meeting the grant requirements and why we feel like we are. So both of those things are coming up. May 1st, we'll be releasing a project update report. This project update report is something that is legislatively required. It's what we do in the odd years. In the even years, we do business plans. In the odd years, we do project update reports. We had typically submitted those on March 1st. We asked for a little extension. We're going to submit it on May 1st, and then it's going to almost be like a mini business plan probably this year, right? Because we've got the new governor now. He's got a vision. That project update report is going to really articulate, right, in exciting language, hopefully, what he started to unveil in the state of the state, why what we're doing meets the federal grant requirements, and the progress that we've made point by point on the project, and the progress we've made as an agency point by point on getting our business affairs in order.
Awesome, thank you.
Michelle, I've got a couple of questions. I also want to say that having seen you run some of these meetings up in the San Fernando Valley, you're a strong woman.
Thank you.
A couple of questions. One is that the corridor you're building right now, are the existing Amtrak trains going to be able to use those tracks, diesel-powered Amtrak trains that are running between Bakersfield and up north now? Are they going to be able to use that track?
That is not, that is possible. That is a possible use, back to that FCS concept that I brought. That is not a preferable use. The agency has always wanted to use our tracks for electric trains. And so that will be the goal. That's what the governor articulated. We could meet the entry-level requirements of the FRA grant with any train using it. I think we are going to try very, very hard not to have it be anything but an electric train running on it. I mean, that is the promise of this project.
So if that's the case, has any study begun about using an engine, Amtrak, it could be converted between electric and diesel, so it could start in the Bay Area and then convert to electric up north and then come down to Bakersfield? Is that a possibility?
I think the technology is beginning to emerge that would make that a possibility. I don't know we have not settled on a technology. I think we want to buy rolling stock though. We want to buy electric rolling stock, so I can't speak to that. I think we will try to be we will try to use the taxpayer dollars as efficiently as we can, and I think, we're just gonna have to see. I feel like the state of California is not going to invest in a diesel train though, right? As the state of California, what is important to us? It's the economy and it's climate change and the environment. We are not gonna invest probably in diesel.
So the idea would be then Amtrak service would terminate at the northern terminus of the high-speed rail system, and then it would transfer and then come down to Bakersfield. Is that the idea?
Well, I mean, we've designed the whole system down here so they can travel on our tracks under our wire.
Yeah.
They're just not going to be us, right? Like, we think it is important to have a distinction and to have those all-electric trains operating as well.
Right.
So I can't speak to exactly, that's what, that room full of people in Sacramento are doing right now furiously, is trying to figure out how we wring the most value out of that first section. So I think there's a lot more to come on the northern piece. That piece up at Merced, there was some description of it in our 2018 business plan, and there's been some theorizing about what might happen up there. But now that there's a real focus on it, I suspect it'll be better than what we've seen today.
Okay. A couple other quick questions. The price tag on the commuter rail from San Jose to San Francisco, the electrification, do you know, is there a timetable when that's going to be completed, and what is the overall price tag of that?
I don't know. It's hard to. It's in the several billions. We are putting about $700 million into it right now. It's received some other state funds. It depends on, a lot of things, what it ends up being. It's my understanding that they want that operational before the middle of, before 2025. And they're in play right now.
So the goal is to have it completed by 2025?
Yeah.
And then, again, another price question. The run-through tracks here, is there a timetable for that being completed, and what is the price tag on that?
Well, the price tag is hotly debated right now, depending on the features of the project, and specifically the features of the amenities of the project, right? What does that concourse look like? The price that we have right now is, $1.5 to $2 billion, depending on the features of the concourse. For the whole thing, we are working on creating or establishing a Phase A, which is described, I believe, in the CEQA documents that Metro has, or at least somewhat described in those documents, so that we can actually do more of a track project to get going, to get that bridge across the 101 and get tracks connected back down south. And that price tag for that is hovering right about $1 billion. And so that's what we're gonna work on first, is the track component and what we call phase A of the project. And I think more and more discussion of that will be ongoing, probably pretty quickly, because the idea is to make that phase A operational time for the 2028 Olympics, right?
Thank you.
Maybe 2026. You know, we got that World Cup too. Don't forget. I'm gonna go back and then come up again.
I just had a couple of questions as well. I wanted to get a better sense of where you are with Burbank to LA and LA to Anaheim. You have like a timed ROD, the end of the environmental process. When is that specifically going to be done? Also, do you have a cost estimates, what that might include, et cetera?
So we've got draft environmental documents releasing towards the end of 2019 for Burbank to LA. Probably the end of 2020 for Los Angeles to Anaheim. It was originally first in the queue, but this discussion that we're having with all of the operators has had us kind of take a half step back and make sure that we've got all the features in that project that we need. So then we would have rods in 2020 and 2021. We should have the rods for everything in Southern California by the end of 2021. Our deadline under the ARA grant, just for a frame of reference, is 2022.
Okay. So what exactly does the cost of estimates include? Is it talking about Union Station, that something there, or?
So no, I mean, we're starting to take out pieces of the cost, right? Like, I mean, there would not be a point of us cost estimating Linkus in our document if we're already investing in it, and we will be investing in it, and there's a separate, so we're working to try to take some of those things out, but we need to do probably a more scientific job. We cost estimate in our business plan like an opening day scenario, right? Like whatever you can do to get it over the finish line and open it. In our EISs, we cost estimate a mature operating system. All of the features we think we need to accommodate, you know, a very robust high-speed rail operation. So there's a little bit of a difference. We're looking at several $1 billion for Burbank to LA, and we're looking at a little north of $4 billion right now for LA to Anaheim. In the robust cost estimate in the EISs, and if you go back and look at the board item from the fall in November for Palmdale to Burbank, Burbank to LA, and LA to Anaheim, there's a little report, and it includes those cost estimates in that report, and October was Bakersfield to Palmdale.
And finally, what's the budget for electrification for both of those?
I do not know what the difference in the breakdown is.
Thank you.
So, I've got a slightly more entry-level question. I actually was going to pass on this meeting until the governor said what he said, and I was like, oh wait, now I have to find out what's going on with high-speed rail.
I know, you know, the LA Times Ed Board, all of a sudden, they're saying, keep our high-speed rail, go figure.
So here's what I'm wondering is, the
Don't
tracks,
know what you've got till it's gone.
the tracks are currently working on building, are these going to be like double tracks or triple tracks? Like what kind of capacity do we have in that construction right now?
So where we're building a brand new railroad, we're building 2 tracks, you know, a
Okay.
north and a south track. Where we are joining the urban corridor down here, for the majority from Burbank to LA, there are 2 tracks in that corridor. We were talking about putting 2 more, talking about that becoming a 4-track railroad. When we go south of here, you've got a predominantly 3-track railroad, and we're talking about putting in 1 additional track and making it a 4-track railroad there. It will remain a 2-track railroad from Fullerton to Anaheim. It's very narrow there. And the freight is going off east. The majority of the traffic is going off east at Fullerton. So as we turn down, there are a few freight, and then that's where Lausanne Metrolink also goes, so we can keep that as a 2-track railroad. So that will be 2 electrified tracks there. Down to Anaheim, and then where it's a 4-track railroad between LA Union Station and Fullerton, it will be 2 electrified tracks and 2 non-electrified tracks, 2 electrified passenger tracks, all passenger service on 2 tracks, all freight service on 2 non-electrified tracks. North here, again, 4 tracks, 2 electrified, 2 non-electrified.
So, because what I'm looking at is the Central Valley portion right now. And I get why Palmdale's, you know, a node for a future connection to Vegas. I get a lot of the other stops. I don't get Kings to Tulare. I don't get like why I couldn't build a triple tracks, which have a friggin' express train from LA to San Francisco that doesn't do all the local stops up there. I know they're not local, but they feel like they're fairly local stops. So.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is
Politics?
they probably don't get Palmdale, right? Like, I mean, like, all, well, you know, all politics is local, of course, but geography matters and your perspective matters. And when you take a look at what's going on up there and the pressure, right, the housing pressures in Northern California, you know, you've got these job centers up there associated with Silicon Valley, and then you've got the regular folks who've got to find a place to live. And so I think that starts to speak to the jobs housing balance a little bit in a little bit of a different way up there in Northern California. Kings Tulare, I don't know, there's an outlet mall there. You know, that's not my region, so I can't debate the finer points of Kings Tulare.
Well, it's Yosemite and Sequoia
But-
tourist connection, that's what it was.
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you take a look at, that's the other thing, if you take a look at a tourism map, you know, when I go and talk to somebody in the tour, you know, they're like, somebody comes to California, they come from, you know, overseas, right? Where do they go? They go to San Francisco, they go to Yosemite, they go to Vegas, they go to Hollywood,
Disneyland.
you know, they go to Disneyland. Yeah, oh yeah, Disneyland. They go to Disneyland, right? They go to so, you know, and if you think about it, who are the people in the world that ride trains?
Everyone else.
They're everyone else, right? So if all of the folks that come here, and you know, we're setting records, right, here in LA County. It's what 50 million visitors or something crazy? I mean, not all of those are from overseas. But you know, if instead of putting a whole bunch of visitors in rental cars at LAX, we can put them on a train, that probably makes all of us happier and safer when we're riding our bikes around the roads.
Yeah.
I think I've got a couple, hopefully short ones. You answered one, there's, at no time does the track for high-speed rail share its track with freight. By virtue of one's diesel and one's electric.
Well, we are designing it, while the majority of the operations would be split, we are designing that whole set of tracks so that anybody can use any of the tracks, including high-speed rail. Right, so the freight, like in a track outage situation, a maintenance situation, right, the freight would come on our track, right? It is designed that. They would not prefer to operate there for their own reasons, because they're slow and they get in the way and they don't want to, you know, have to worry about it. But yes, the freight trains will be able to operate on the electrified. That'll be double high catenary.
I understand. Okay, could you pull up the map from Palmdale to Burbank? You've talked about the route, I don't know it that well. Which line is it? Which of the magenta, whatever that color is? You passed it already. Forward. One more. Which route is the preferred?
It's this one.
Does that still go through National Forest?
Yeah, it goes under it.
Okay. And
Absolutely.
They raise the fuss?
We have coordinating meetings with them all the time. They have the ability, these forests down here have the ability to have transportation corridors, you know, integrated in. It's not, I mean, they're not raising a fuss.
That's all good.
Yeah.
Okay. For contracts, different subject entirely here. These are all design build.
So far, all of our infrastructure projects have been design build. There's always been a lot of talk about the stations maybe being design bid build, but right now, in the short term, design build.
And nobody's mentioned P3.
Of course, we've talked a lot about it. We talked about it in our business plan. We had we did a letter of interest a few years ago, and at this point, we also have an unsolicited proposal policy. So if anybody at any time felt like they were ready to do it, they could write us a proposal and, we could do it. One of the challenges is we just haven't had the environmental clearance. We haven't had the route selections yet. And so the private sector doesn't usually want to mess around and tell you how to route.
Well, based on what you said a few moments ago, and maybe I didn't listen exactly, but you're gonna get your record of decision by the end of 21 for everything you're talking about. What's your gut feeling? Is that ambitious, attainable? Is it a fair weather schedule?
Well, we've been working at it for quite a long time, so, something can always, a wrench can always get thrown in, but I think if we put our nose to the grindstone, we can do it.
Final question. The east-west corridor, I don't know, LA or Burbank to San Bernardino, just describe where is that? I mean, is it along 210 or somewhere with 10 or?
This one down here, the 91 line, this one down here?
From
Our phase 2, we have 2 routes. We are studying one along the 60 and one along the 10. And we have not made a decision there. We do not have a preferred alternative on phase 2.
Are those both the UP existing corridors?
I think we're using the freeway. I mean, it's mostly trying to hug the freeway. It's not really looking at we come into the UP corridor out by Ontario to get to the Ontario airport. That's one of the things that we want to try to achieve, but it doesn't really hug, or they haven't historically hugged one of the UP corridors. We're probably going to look at maybe getting a little bit closer in there because you might be able to get service out to Ontario easier than some of the things that we've looked at in the past. And so we're working on completing some studies that talk about some different ways to get there.
First of all, thank you for your presentation. I had a couple questions on the station. The first one is, what is the timeline for getting into the station procurement process? When do you see that happening?
For our stations, it's probably still a little bit of time. I think we're going to want to get the track and systems packages probably out the door before we get the stations packages. You might want to look at those. I think there's always a possibility that we could wrap the stations in, depending on how fast we would want to move. We had RFPs ready in the past to go out, and we decided not to. So if we wanted to go fast, those could go out. But then the other question is, would you bundle them? Would you do a single, package for, Bakersfield and Kings Tulare and Fresno, or would you do them separate? So I just keep watching our website, watch our board meeting, watch the thing that's going to be the most instructive, and unfortunately this work is being done, right? This analysis is being done right now, is that project update report.
Yeah.
That'll really give you some insight into what the timing would be to open things up, and then that'll help, kind of back it up.
And what is the process for identifying the remaining station locations? Is that just together with route?
Yes, yeah, that goes with the route selection process. Yeah, we had 3 locations in the San Fernando Valley where we started a few years ago, so we're down to Burbank.
So a couple of questions. The first one I hope is a quick one. Am I missing something between being able to put 2 different locomotives just right next to each other, like one with a pantograph and the other one diesel, and just using those interchangeably if there was a need for that in a part of the segment?
So what we're seeing emerge right now, and I'm gonna say, as an agency, we are vendor neutral at this point. Obviously, we haven't bought rolling stock, but I'm going to use the name of a vendor just because I happen to know that I think you might be able to find some information on their website. Stadler, for instance, is experimenting with locomotives that have open spaces. And you can put any kind of propulsion, right, or any type of energy in these open spaces. So you can mix and match and make locomotives basically that are all electric, all diesel, or have a little bit of both. So it's not two different locomotives, it's a single locomotive that you can go back and forth. That's where the market appears to be going. I mean, you could probably put in hydrogen too, right? Like you could literally put in any propulsion. That seems to be kind of an experimental space.
Well, yeah.
And you guys might be able to speak to that a little more.
Bombardier, they already make, I forget, it's the ALP 45. It's, they make a dual mode diesel electric, and they use it in Montreal and New Jersey, where, you know, there's sections that don't have catenary, they turn on the diesel. And there's been versions of those that have existed, several versions over the decades.
Yeah.
But I've heard those particular locomotives, they've had reliability problems on the diesel end, not the electric end, but.
That's swine diesel.
Yeah.
We just gotta get rid of it, yeah.
Right, so my question relates to the fact that I spent my high school year living in a town maybe about 40 minutes south of Fresno. So I pay attention whenever that comes up in any setting, because as having been, you know, brought up there, it seems like we kind of are out of the conversation at times between what happens between San Francisco and Los Angeles. So I appreciate that someone brought up the fact that, you know, a lot of people go there for Yosemite and
Yeah.
other things. But so the question was just like, could you just couple two locomotives together and use those, and whether that was even possible? Like,
Well, yeah, you know, I mean, yeah, sure. Like,
Right,
I
so
mean,
that
like
was-
at a very low level, yes.
That
Like
was-
if you
yeah.
had two, like, right, you know, you could put them
like
front,
an
back,
outside
and.
locomotive and then an electric locomotive.
I mean, they would have to be compatible and have compatible,
Sure.
you know, attachments and
Couple
all kinds of
things,
things, yeah.
But I mean, it could be done. And then the question, the follow-up question to that is, I think when you said that electrification wasn't for certain, or that it's the preferred but not the for certain kind of take on the Central Valley, is that I know that, like, for example, the California Air Resources Board is putting a lot of money into the valley to ensure that air quality improves, because air quality has been an issue and will continue to be an issue for decades to come. I was wondering if this is not an opportunity to kind of make a demonstration of all the bells and whistles of high-speed rail between Bakersfield and Merced, where somebody could be like, hey, I heard there's like high-speed rail up there, let's just go.
Let's
you know,
go for a
check it out."
vacation, right?
Exactly, and it will be like the flagship, you
Yeah.
know, everything that will come to like San Francisco and Los Angeles eventually. So, what do you
Yeah.
like? What do you think about that?
I mean, I think we have to run high-speed trains up there. We've got to get high-speed trains, we've got to test high-speed trains and get them certified, and that's what's got to be running up there. There is a way to be compliant with the grant without doing that. That is not the agency's preference, and it has never been. I think it's highly unlikely. But I just wanted to kind of draw everyone's attention to the fact that you could actually meet there. You know, I saw that Elaine, you know, said that it was a big California bait and switch, right? Today she made comments out loud that said that apparently. You know, I just wanted to point out that, you know, the features of the grants are such that everything that's being planned is compliant, but we have to run electric.
Right. So lastly, in a former position, I worked in the highway programs here at Metro and assisted in the high-desert corridor, multi-purpose corridor between Palmdale and Victorville, which is supposed to be the link between California High-Speed Rail and Desert Express or Express West, whichever one, whatever name is currently now.
Brightline Virgin.
Right.
Correct.
So I recall at that time that, you know, when they were explaining their business plans, they said, we know that the market to serve is Los Angeles, like the core urban area of Los Angeles, but it's gonna be impossible getting there for now. So we're gonna build out in Victorville and, add like 4, 5, 6 levels of parking structures all around the station, and that's gonna take care of that. So that was a simple, or I don't know if simple is the right word, but that's a straightforward project because it's like going to a destination, right? Las Vegas, like it's one place, far away, easy to, and they're saying you can
High
drink
volume
and
OD pair,
gamble.
right?
Once you pass the state line, you could even gamble on the train, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was something like that. So I was wondering, like for high-speed rail in the valley, like will the authority, do you think, will take an approach of building out the tail end of the segment simultaneously, or will it be something like, let's see, let's battle it out, see who accommodates quicker to high-speed rail once we have the operational segment, and we'll have like a Bakersfield to San Francisco before we have an LA to Merced, for example.
Well, our business plan kind of, if you go on our website and read our business plan, that's what it's basically talking about. It's talking about in 2018, we said we would build from the Central Valley to the Silicon Valley, so we would go north first. At the end of the day, we would build as much as we could with funding, right? So if there was funding available to build the entire thing simultaneously, we would build the entire thing simultaneously. But the interesting thing about funding is you never know exactly where it's going to come from. You get your projects ready because you don't know, right? We didn't know there would be ARA funds in 2005, but we got our project ready and we got those ARA funds in 2008, for instance. So you get your projects ready, and each location has unique features that qualify it for certain types of funding. So there's nothing to stop anybody, or my authority for that matter, from going for other types of funding that can only be used in certain contexts, right? There's going to be types of funding that can be used in the urban area, types of funding that can be in rural, types of funding that, the cap and trade connected, which is the, the air quality stuff. So that's why we want to get the whole thing environmentally cleared, so you can start thinking about deconstructing it into packages that you could build, so that you can stop talking about needing on one tranche, right, $70 billion, right? That's just, that kills you. That sucks all the air out of the room. But if you could start saying, once you get Merced to Bakersfield open, oh, hey, why don't we, build halfway across the Tehachapi's and open a temporary station in Tehachapi, for instance, right? Right? Oh, well, yeah, okay, like maybe, there's some type of rural funding, available to do something like that. And when you go north, you can start being much more creative once you have a piece open, right? And once you have the route clearance. So that's what we're trying to do.
So as far as work package 5 and work package 6, what are the geographical limits?
I don't know exactly at this point. I'm sorry. I know that they're being worked on now. I know that in the past there were different limits. I think they're a little bit different now, so I can't. This is all May 1. You should have a much better idea of what that is.
Does the work package 1 extend all the way to Merced Station? Right now?
It does right now, yes. It has the capacity to do that.
It's
Yes.
in the contract?
Yes, yes. Anything else? All right. What's that? Oh, wait, one more?
So this rail maintenance yard that they're thinking about, Fresno's bidding on, what is the timing on awarding that?
I don't know if that will be separate or if that will be part of the track and systems. So it will be soon, but it may not go out as a separate contract. It may go as part of the track and systems contract, because at the end of the day, it's all connected.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. hope that you enjoyed tonight's meeting. Michelle does a great job as always. And despite all the crazy news, the project moves on. March 21st is our next meeting with Vincent, who was here with his daughter. And he'll be talking about the Link Union Station project. And that's going to be a very interesting meeting. So if you're not on the mailing list, I got business cards and I'll put you on the list and you'll get invitations. So I welcome you all and thank you. There's still a little bit of food left if you want to grab a sandwich or some